I didn't lose my son in a single day. I lost him in fragments, in whispered conversations I wasn't invited to, in forms filed behind closed doors, in the way people began looking at me, not with concern, but with caution. It started small. Nathan, my ex-husband, a seasoned lawyer with a smile like a weapon, would say. Things like, Camille's been overwhelmed lately. Nothing serious, of course. She cries a lot. Hormones, maybe, or something deeper. I didn't hear those words until they echoed through the courtroom, recorded in legal transcripts. But by then, the damage was done. When Micah was born, I fell apart. Not dangerously, not violently, just quietly. The kind of unraveling you don't notice until you're clutching the bathroom sink at 3 a.m., wondering why your hands are trembling and your chest won't let you breathe. I went to therapy. I followed every step. I journaled, took my meds, asked for help. Nathan said he was proud of me. "You're being brave," he'd whisper while texting someone else across the dinner table. Turns out he wasn't proud. He was preparing. By the time Micah turned 6, Nathan had already petitioned for full custody, citing mental instability, erratic emotional patterns, concerning episodes. What he meant was, I cried after losing my job. I panicked when Micah had a fever. I begged my therapist to help me feel human again. And all of it, every text, every voicemail, every tear-stained confession, became his arsenal. In court, I was no longer a mother. I was an exhibit, Exhibit A voice memo of me sobbing, Exhibit B, therapy notes taken out of context. Exhibit C, Micah's drawing labeled Dad's house equals happy, Mom's house equals sad. They didn't see the full picture. They didn't want to. Nathan came to court in polished shoes and a $900 suit. I came with shaking hands and a folder full of truths no one would read. When the judge granted him temporary custody, I didn't scream, I didn't plead. I just stood there, heart crumbling, as Micah reached for a man who was erasing me piece by piece. That night, I sat alone in the apartment Nathan used to call ours. There was a silence that felt heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. I promised myself something: I would not disappear. I would not play the part they wrote for me, because one day, someone else would speak, someone who saw everything, my son, and when that day came, even the courtroom would fall silent. The first time I stepped back into family court, I realized something brutal. I wasn't here to prove I was a good mother. I was here to prove I wasn't a monster. And the burden of proof, it was mine, always mine. Nathan walked in like he belonged there, crisp suit, polished cufflinks, sympathy on his face, and strategy in his eyes. He shook hands with the bailiff, nodded respectfully to the judge. It was a performance, and like all great actors, he knew his audience. Meanwhile, I stood there in a second-hand blazer, clutching a stack of papers no one would read. Proof of therapy attendance, screenshots of texts where I asked for help, not because I was unstable, but because I was human. None of it mattered. When a man cries for help, he's seen as brave. When a woman does, she's unstable. The prosecutor opened with, "Your Honor, our case is not about vengeance, it's about safety." That word safety hung in the air like a noose. They spoke in terms that made me feel like I wasn't even present, like I was a case file, not a mother. They used phrases like pattern of emotional dysregulation and questionable decision-making. What they meant was, I cried in the shower. I panicked when Micah fell and hit his head. I once called the school 6 times in one day because he had a fever and no one returned my call. They painted my fear as hysteria, my concern as chaos, my vulnerability as danger. Nathan took the stand on day 2. He began with a sigh, well-rehearsed, just long enough to seem sincere. "I never wanted it to come to this," he said. She was a wonderful mother. But after the divorce, something changed. He talked about late-night phone calls, about the time I showed up unannounced on Micah's birthday with a cake and tear-streaked cheeks. What he didn't mention was that he hadn't invited me, that I'd waited 3 hours outside just to see my son blow out a candle. He recited each incident like a grocery list of madness. He spoke calmly, softly, lovingly even. And the more gently he spoke, the more monstrous I seemed. They brought up the video, yes, that video. Me sitting on the floor of my apartment, rocking back and forth, whispering Micah's name. It was filmed without my knowledge. Nathan claimed he found it on a nanny cam I accidentally left on. In truth, he had been surveilling me for months. The judge watched that clip twice. No context, no explanation, just a mother breaking down in silence. My lawyer, God bless her, tried to redirect the narrative. She asked about my community work, my role at the elementary school. She even called my therapist as a witness. But the moment my therapist admitted that I'd once had thoughts of disappearing, the courtroom shifted. They didn't hear the second half of the sentence, but Camille immediately told me she never acted on it. She just wanted the pain to stop. the word disappearing lodged in everyone's brain like a splinter. I wasn't unstable, I was exhausted, but exhaustion doesn't win custody. Then came the moment I feared most. They called Micah to the stand. I wanted to leap across the aisle, shield him, scream, "Don't you dare drag him into this." But I didn't, because screaming would prove them right. So I sat, hands folded, heart in pieces. Micah walked in wearing a little gray blazer, too big for him. His hair was parted to the side, just like Nathan's. He looked like a witness, not a child. The bailiff swore him in. He looked confused. The judge reassured him. "Just answer honestly. Okay?" Nathan's lawyer started gently, too gently. "Micah, sweetheart, when you're at Mommy's house, do you feel safe?" "Yes." "Has Mommy ever yelled at you?" "Sometimes." "And when she does, how does that make you feel?" I could see Micah struggling. His hands twisted in his lap, his feet didn't touch the ground. I wanted to run to him, hold him. Tell him it was okay to tell the truth, even if it hurt me. Then came the question that made the room go still. "Did Mommy ever cry in front of you?" Micah nodded. "Did that make you scared?" He paused, looked down and whispered, "No. It made me want to hug her. That silence. That single line. It nearly shattered me." Nathan leaned forward, his jaw tightening. His lawyer shifted gears. "Do you remember when Mommy forgot to pick you up from soccer?" Micah nodded. "Do you remember what you told your teacher, that she probably got stuck in traffic?" They pressed on, tried to corner him into confession, tried to use his love for me as evidence of confusion. But then Micah looked at me, then at the judge, then he reached into his backpack and pulled out something small. A USB stick. "Can I show you something?" he asked. Everyone froze, even Nathan. The judge raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Micah whispered. "It's a video from my tablet. I recorded it." The judge glanced at the attorneys, then gave a slow nod. Micah stood, walked to the clerk, placed the USB in her hand like it was sacred. And in that moment, for the first time in this entire legal nightmare, I saw Nathan panic, just a flicker, a shadow in his eyes. And I knew whatever was on that video would change everything I didn't know. Micah had recorded anything. That's what hit me first, not the hope, not the fear, but the pure aching realization that my 9-year-old son had been carrying the burden of truth, quietly, carefully alone. The clerk plugged in the USB. There was a pause, a breath that stretched across the courtroom like a tightrope. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Let's hear it," she said. The screen flickered, a grainy image came to life. Micah's bedroom. There was his lamp with the dinosaur sticker, his bookshelf uneven but overflowing, and Nathan standing at the doorway, arms crossed, voiced sharp. "Do you want to live with Mommy again?" "Huh, you think that's what's best for you? She cries all the time. She can't even cook without burning something. Do you want that?" Micah off-screen didn't respond, but the silence was loud. It said everything. Nathan paced, raked a hand through his hair. "This is temporary. After the hearing, you'll be with me full-time. We're going to win this, but you have to help me, okay? If anyone asks, you say you don't feel safe there." "Got it." My chest caved in. The judge leaned forward. Nathan's attorney stood abruptly. "Objection, Your Honor, this footage is—" "Sit down," the judge snapped. "We're watching this." Another clip loaded. Different day, same room. Nathan again. "Camille can't hold it together. She's broken, and broken people don't raise healthy kids." He wasn't yelling, he wasn't angry. That was the worst part. He sounded calm, controlled, convincing. It was the same voice he used in court, the same voice they believed. Until now, Micah had titled the file, "When Daddy Talks Different." That gutted me, because it meant he knew. He knew Nathan was wearing masks. He knew this wasn't justice, it was strategy. There was one final clip, Nathan sitting at the kitchen table, speaking into his phone, thinking Micah wasn't around. "We've got this in the bag." The judge already leans conservative. "Camille looks like a wreck. We just need Micah to play his part." He sipped wine. "Honestly, if she wasn't so damn emotional, I wouldn't have to do this. But she's unstable, always has been." Then laughter, not forced, not bitter, just casual, like this was a game. Like my life, my motherhood was his to edit. The screen went black, no music, no credits, just silence. The kind that wasn't peaceful, it was shattering. I looked at Nathan. He wasn't smiling anymore. His mouth was twitching, his jaw clenched so hard I thought he might crack a tooth. For the first time I saw it, the unraveling. He wasn't the composed, calm father anymore. He was cornered. The judge turned to him. "Mr. Hale, do you deny that this is your voice? He opened his mouth, closed it, then forced out a weak, "This. This is out of context." "Enough," the judge cut in. She turned to me. "Ms. Dawson, do you have any knowledge of your son recording this?" I shook my head, still trembling, still trying to breathe. "No, Your Honor, I had no idea." The judge exhaled deeply. She took off her glasses, pinched the bridge of her nose, and the courtroom, so loud with accusation just an hour earlier, went completely still. Micah sat beside me now. His little hand clutched mine. He looked up, eyes wide, waiting for me to say something. I leaned down, pressed my forehead to his, and whispered, "You were so brave," he whispered back. "I didn't want them to think you were a bad mom." And just like that, the tears came. Not from pain, not from fear, but from a love so fierce it burned through every lie they ever told. Nathan stood. His voice cracked. I was just trying to protect him." The judge didn't flinch. "You manipulated a child, Mr. Hale. You coached him to lie, and you weaponized this court." She turned to the clerk. "We are adjourning for the day. I will need time to review all new evidence, and I want a guardian ad litem assigned immediately." Her voice dropped into ice. "Mr. Hale, do not contact your son until further notice. This courtroom is not your theater." As we left the building, reporters were already outside. Microphones, cameras, flashes. Nathan walked right past them, head down, hand covering his face. He had nothing left to say. But I didn't stop. I held Micah close, walked slowly, deliberately, because they had seen the footage, they had seen the lie, and more importantly, they had seen him. My son, 9 years old, and stronger than anyone in that courtroom. That night I sat with him on the couch. He picked the movie, we shared popcorn, and at one point he rested his head on my shoulder and said, "You feel safe now, right?" I smiled. Not because the war was over, but because the tide had turned, and this time, the truth was on tape. The courtroom felt colder when we returned the next morning. It wasn't the AC, it was the atmosphere. Nathan sat with his shoulders a little lower, his suit still pressed, his tie still straight. But the mask was gone, and in its place, panic tightly bottled but leaking at the corners. His lawyer whispered to him as the judge entered. But Nathan didn't reply. He just stared straight ahead, lips pressed thin. This was no longer his stage. The script had slipped from his fingers. And the spotlight was no longer kind. The judge opened with a tone that made everyone sit straighter. "Yesterday's footage introduced substantial concern over the conduct of Mr. Hale. I have spent the last 12 hours reviewing it frame by frame." She turned toward Nathan. "This court does not tolerate manipulation, least of all the coaching of a minor to fabricate or distort testimony." The silence was deafening. Nathan cleared his throat, then tried, "Your Honor. I, Mr. Hale, sit down. You will speak when questioned." And just like that, the man who once towered over me in court, who wielded charm like a sword and words like chains, was reduced to a shadow in his own performance. My attorney requested the floor. She moved with calm precision like a surgeon making the first incision. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit supplemental evidence text transcripts recovered from Mr. Hale's personal cloud backup forwarded by an anonymous tip." Nathan's head jerked. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Anonymous." Apparently one of Mr. Hale's former legal assistants. The messages show a clear pattern of intent to destabilize Miss Dawson emotionally and construct a false narrative for this custody battle. The clerk began distributing printed copies. The texts were venom in ink. "Don't worry, she'll melt down eventually. Just need to push the right buttons. If we can catch her crying in public, that's gold. Micah will believe what I tell him. He's loyal." One message simply said, "Courts love calm men and emotional women. This won't even be hard." My hands shook as I read them. Not from pain, from rage. Not just at Nathan, but at the system that almost believed him. At the judge who nearly let him win. At myself for once, thinking my silence was strength. The judge looked up slowly. "Mr. Hale, how do you respond to these?" He swallowed. "They're taken out of context. I was venting to a colleague I never intended." "You never intended for them to come to light," she said coldly. "But they did." And then she read the last message aloud. "I don't need to prove she's crazy. I just need to make her look that way." You could have heard a pin drop. Even the bailiff blinked. That's when my lawyer rose again. "Your Honor, we are formally requesting full custody be awarded to Ms. Dawson, effective immediately. We are also requesting an emergency protective order barring Mr. Hale from unsupervised contact with Micah, and that a criminal investigation be opened for custodial interference and evidence tampering." Nathan shot up. "You can't do this. This is my son." The judge banged her gavel once, hard enough. "You may sit or you may be escorted out." He sat, but not out of respect, out of fear, because for the first time in this entire saga, he didn't hold the power anymore. They called Micah back to the stand. I wanted to object, to protect him, but he walked in steady, calm. There was no hesitation, Micah. The judge asked, "Why did you record those videos?" He looked at her, voice clear. "Because no one believed Mom, not even me sometimes. But then I started to notice things. The way Dad only said those things when we were alone, the way he smiled at court but looked different at home." He paused. "I just wanted the truth to be real for someone else." The judge nodded slowly. It is. Then she turned to me. "Ms. Dawson, the court recognizes your efforts to maintain stability under extraordinary emotional duress. You've been monitored, scrutinized, and misrepresented, but not broken." She paused. "Effective immediately. Full physical and legal custody is returned to you." She turned back to Nathan. "Mr. Hale, any further contact with the minor will require court approval. Your actions suggest calculated deception. This court will be recommending further review by the state bar and law enforcement." Micah reached for my hand. I didn't cry. Not yet, because I wasn't just reclaiming my son, I was reclaiming myself. Outside, the press was waiting. Microphones and faces, questions flying like arrows. Nathan shoved past them, face red, muttering, "No comment." But they weren't looking at him. They were looking at us, me and Micah. And I finally understood something. Nathan had tried to erase me. Not because I was unstable, but because I wasn't. Because I endured. Because I healed. And because the one person he thought he controlled became the voice he couldn't silence. That night, Micah and I sat on the porch eating ice cream in silence. He leaned against me. "Did I do okay?" I kissed his head. "You did more than okay, baby. You changed everything." He smiled. "So, you're not mad?" I recorded it. I shook my head. "You were braver than I've ever been." He paused. "Then maybe I got that from you." And just like that, the silence finally felt safe. When the final gavel dropped, there wasn't applause, there was no music, no tears from the gallery, just stillness, the kind that settles over a battlefield after the smoke clears, when the war has been won, but the wounds still sting. Nathan didn't look at me as the judge read the official order. Didn't even glance my way as the clerk confirmed the custody transition. He just sat there, shoulders hunched, hands clasped tightly together like he was praying to a god he no longer believed in. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Because winning isn't always a victory. Sometimes it's just survival with scars. As I stepped out of the courtroom, Micah's hand found mine. He didn't say a word, but he didn't have to. The strength in that small grip said everything. We walked past the cameras again. This time they didn't call Nathan's name. They called mine. "Ms. Dawson, how do you feel about the ruling? Do you think the system failed you? Will you be seeking further legal action?" I paused, looked down at Micah. He gave the smallest of nods. So I turned to them and said, "I don't want to speak for the system, but I will speak for my son." And he told the truth when no one else could. That's what matters. That night we went home, our home. The apartment Nathan once mocked for being too small for raising a boy. It smelled like lavender and something warm, like comfort, like starting over. Micah threw his backpack on the couch and kicked off his shoes. Then he turned to me, wide-eyed. "Can we build the Lego castle tonight?" It was such a normal request, so sweet, so real, that I had to step into the kitchen and quietly break down for 2 minutes. Not out of grief, but gratitude. Because for the first time in 2 years, I could say yes. Without fear of the next court date, without fear of being recorded, without fear of it being used against me. We built that castle piece by piece, just like we were rebuilding us. And at the end of it, Micah placed one of the little Lego knights on the tallest tower. "That's you," he said. "You didn't fall." I laughed softly. "You think I'm a knight?" "No. You're the queen. Knights don't last as long." That one almost broke me again. In the weeks that followed, Nathan's world slowly collapsed in the same quiet way he once unraveled mine. The bar opened a formal investigation. He lost clients, lost partnerships, and slowly lost the story he'd spent years writing. Turns out, truth has a way of echoing once someone dares to speak it out loud. But I didn't gloat. I didn't send him the articles or screenshots or headlines. I didn't post long messages online. Didn't tell Micah that his father was finally getting what he deserved, because that wasn't the story I wanted to hand down to my son. Instead, I told him this. Sometimes people lie because they're afraid of losing control. But love isn't about control, it's about trust. And you showed the world what trust really looks like. He nodded. "I didn't mean to get Dad in trouble." "I know you didn't get him in trouble." He did that all on his own. You just made sure the truth had a voice. Eventually, we moved, not because we had to, but because I wanted a fresh start. We found a small house on the edge of town. It had a porch, a garden, and a tree in the backyard that Micah immediately claimed as his reading spot. On our first night there, I tucked him in, turned off the light, and before I could close the door, he called out, "Mom, yeah, does this mean you're safe now?" My heart caught in my throat. "Yeah, baby, I'm safe." There was a pause. Good. Then maybe I can stop recording stuff. And just like that, I realized the full weight of what he'd been carrying. That night, I opened my journal, the one I used to track every thought, every panic, every step of my fight. And I wrote. He spoke not with vengeance, not with bitterness, but with clarity. And in that courtroom, a child did what a system almost refused to tell the truth. I used to think losing my voice meant I was weak, but now I know. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is raise a child who speaks for you when the world won't listen. They tried to silence me, gaslight me, erase me. But in the end, they forgot one thing. I gave birth to the voice that would bring them down.